Well, friends, thank you for watching this series. And for me, it's been interesting and exciting because I've gotten to do some homework. I've learned some things. I hope that you have too. And so this video, this last one, the fifth episode, I'll just do a short recap, but then I want to share with you what does this mean to me? What does Jesus dying on the cross mean for me as a human, as a person living 2,000 years later? So when we started in the Garden of Gethsemane, the prayers of Jesus, he was greatly troubled and in agony. That's when he suffered the hematidrosis, his sweat and blood mixed. This was the start of the suffering. During the trials, going back and forth to the different locations, he suffered rough beatings, which in and of themselves were not that traumatic. But again, they added to the sleep-deprived and thirsty person in Jesus. Then comes the scourging, or the flogging. Being flogged by a flagrum, that's the instrument with the leather thongs coming off of it, Jesus endured a tremendously brutal beating. Blood loss and shock were really taking a toll on Jesus at this point. Next, Jesus is crowned with a crown of thorns. Immense pain shooting through the head and face is now at a constant pace because they keep moving. If it was perfectly still, they would stop. But every slightest moment, even the slight breeze, would activate those pain sensors. Jesus was forced to walk to Golgotha, carrying this rough, heavy timber on his beaten and already bloody back. Once there at the crucifixion site, Jesus hits new levels of pain and torment with his hands and feet being affixed to the cross with nails. In fact, the word excruciating comes from that Latin out of the cross, the ex or the exit out, cruce, cross. So out of the cross, we have this word, this new word because of crucifixion, the suffering. So when we add all these things up and we look at all of these wounds, now we can figure out, or we can determine how Jesus actually died. Jesus dies as a result of shock. Shock is defined as a complex set of physiological abnormalities caused by a variety of disease processes and injuries. You're like, what? Shock is caused by inadequate organ perfusion, meaning the circulation of liquids through the organs, and tissue oxygenation. In short, the body undergoes trauma, thereby reducing its amount of blood. Since there is less blood to return to the heart, there is less blood that can be pumped back into the body that has that oxygen in it. Symptoms of shock would be cold, clammy skin, anxiety, nausea, rapid, shallow breathing, low blood pressure. In crucifixion, there are two main types of shock. You have hypovolemic and traumatic shock. Hypovolemic shock is shock that's noted by a significant decrease in blood volume due to bleeding. Diarrhea and vomiting would contribute to this as well. Excuse me. Given the wounds that we've looked at in these videos, this is no wonder. This is not a surprise that Jesus is in a severe state of hypovolemic shock. Jesus said, one of the things he said was, "I thirst," when he's on the cross. This would be a gross understatement at this point. The other type of shock that Jesus was experiencing was traumatic shock. The name hints at trauma or injury, which is exactly what Jesus has been suffering these last 10, 12 hours. A car accident, the death of a loved one. Those are traumatic things, and so shock can be a part of those things. They're separated because traumatic shock, while there is pain, there doesn't necessarily have to be a loss of blood. So there's a distinction there between the two. So yes, along with all of the blood loss and that, Jesus would have been experiencing great trauma and great pain. So we put all this together, and I can say that I think, due to crucifixion, Jesus suffered hypovolemic and traumatic shock. These were the cause of cardiac and respiratory arrest. Jesus died because his heart stopped working. You could even take it one step further. He died of a broken heart. And so you think, okay, well, this is historical medical information. This is stuff that you can find on the internet. You can find it in books. You can do your research. Some of these things that I said people might disagree if they have a different opinion or if they found other research. Well, let me just say a couple of things, maybe disclaimers, if you will. One is that I am not a doctor. All of this research came from various books and various websites that I used, and so I was looking toward the experts for their medical and forensic expertise in reviewing what actually happened to Jesus in a physiological way. The second thing is that these videos, they are not complete or comprehensive. There are more details, there are more things that you can pick apart and you can dissect and look at. And so, yeah, this isn't a one-stop answers all your crucifixion questions. Third thing is that I've tried to be fairly objective in my approach. Scientifically speaking, this is a medical thing, or this is a forensic thing, this is a historical thing, this is not a subjective thing, this is not how I feel, this is not what I believe. It is in a scientific way, but not in a religious, theological, moral, ethical sense. And that's what I'll get to in a minute. Jesus died of a broken heart. I've said it a few times in these videos that he was willing to go to this cross. He knew, because he was in communion with his Heavenly Father, he was in constant contact. So when God, his Father, gave him a set of instructions, gave him an order, he would follow that out on this earth. Sometimes the disciples would say, Jesus, why are you doing this, or where are you going? He said, I'm doing what my Father told me to do. When he was 12 years old, his mother and father, they came to Jerusalem to worship, and they did. And then they left. They walked. They started going home. And it was a couple of days, and they're like, where's Jesus? They finally go back, and he's in the temple. And his parents, you can imagine. And he says, I have to be about my Father's business. Well, for you and I, it's fortuitous that the Father's business is about saving. As in saving us from ourselves, from the sin that we're born into. Jesus, I can't even describe in words other than to say what he did was an amazing thing, that he willingly sacrificed his own life. He became the sacrifice and the penalty for something that we can't ever do, that we could not do it ourselves. He was motivated. Remember, we talked about that just real briefly, I think, at episode 4, that he was motivated to go through this horrible thing so that we could have a chance to say yes to God. If you have any questions about saying yes to God, opening your heart and life to what he has and the life that he has for you, email me or the questions, or put a comment in there below and say, put your question in there. I'll be happy. Maybe you want to refute something or whatever. That's fine. Any kind of comment or question that you have, I'll gladly address that. And so I just want you to know that. But again, thank you for just taking some time out of your busy day. Although I am taping these during the COVID-19 quarantine, isolation, social distancing time, so maybe you have more time than you normally would. Whatever the case is, thank you for just being here and for, again, taking some time. And I just encourage you, answer that question we started with. Does science empty your faith, or does it elevate your faith? That's a tough question. I hope you can answer that. I know that I have, and so thank you for indulging me in this journey of mine through Jesus and what I call suffering beyond belief. Thank you.